I was born in Tampa, but I am a Navy brat, so I moved all over the country. For the record, I am from Powder Springs, Georgia, because that's where I went to high school before I joined the Army. My decision to join the Army was the same as a lot of other people who join the Army, is that I was a D student with not a whole lot of future ahead of me. So one day I was asking myself, what am I going to do with, for the rest of my life? I walked in the lunchroom and there was a recruiter. The rest is history. Just like that. So at 18 years old, in the mid to early 90s, kind of off of Black Hawk Down, there was still some buzz from Desert Storm. There's a sense of energy in the military, but it was a tough time to be in the military with the drawdowns. And I can distinctly remember not doing anything militarily related other than chores for weeks on end, and I hated it. I felt trapped, I could see the career potential that the military had to offer. I just didn't feel like I was in the right place at the right time, and I was desperate to make a change, and I didn't know what was available to me. My first MOS was 19 Delta. I chose that MOS based off the coolest recruiter video they had at the recruiting office. They had dune buggies and parachutes, and then there'd be like a snapshot of a Bradley. I'm like, what was that? And then of course the video moved on to other cool stuff, and then, you don't know what you don't know. So my first real job as a 19 Delta would have been as a sergeant, a young sergeant. I had privates underneath me, and I understood through publications and stories and just military culture as a whole what was supposed to happen. I never felt like, that was captured with where I was at. I mean, the Army at the time was broke. We weren't doing anything. And I dreamed of doing some, what we kept saying was high-speed stuff. And I was very close to just getting out of the Army as a whole. And one day I walked into KFC, and there was a friggin' Green Beret there. And it hit me like a bolt of lightning. I should probably go try that. And I was at a juncture, and I went to the recruiter and basically told myself, I'll give, Special Forces selection in one shot, and if I make it, I make it. If not, I'll go flip burgers. Yeah, Kentucky Fried Chicken may or may not have turned me into a Green Beret. If you really get down to the bottom of it, that may be the case, yeah. It's a cavalry scout. Okay. They have a really good mission. But it was at the time where the Army was still very heavily conventional, lots of heavy, slow, bulky armor units, and I think the writing was on the wall to kind of start transitioning to a lighter, more mobile force, and it just didn't seem like there was a lot of emphasis on it. Great soldiers all around. I never got the sense that the Army was interested in deploying that much firepower unless, World War III broke out or something. I'll be honest with you, my time in the big Army is frankly, it's like a blur. It's like it almost didn't happen. It's almost like I look back on high school and it's a distant memory. It did shape, the beginning of my military career, but I didn't really start learning what it meant to be a fighter, a leader, an NCO until I got into the special ops community, and I got some great examples of the guys ahead of me. When I did Special Forces selection, it was about 4 weeks, give or take a few days. More or less, guys like me who don't have any experience in the realm are next to Rangers or next to these very experienced soldiers, but a lot of the events ultimately culminates into Team Week. And those events are designed to kind of break everybody down, regardless of your background, down to the lowest common denominator. You're tested, of course. They're pretty grueling tests. I can remember thinking, holy crap, what have I gotten myself into? I'm not prepared for this several times during SFAS, but really where I understood what it meant to be Special Forces is when the infamous Team Week, hit us full throttle out in the sawdust pits, getting smoked and pushing, Jeeps up sand hills and everything else. It was absolutely, at that point in my life, one of the hardest things, if not the hardest thing I did up until that date. And the only advice I could give to myself that made sense from anybody around me was just don't quit, just don't quit, just don't quit. One foot in front of the other. Well, in selection, the hardest thing I did was at the end of team week, they have a 25-mile road march. And I had prepared for SFAS, but maybe I was immature, I don't know. I may not have been as psychologically prepared as I thought I was. And a couple hours into it, you know, I'm hurting. I mean, you're hurting, you know, you're chafing, you know, all these things are bearing down. The rucksack isn't getting any lighter. And I can remember going off into that dark space, like perhaps maybe I should have went and flipped burgers. But I kept going, I just didn't quit. And the result was, I remember when they called out my roster number and they said I was selected, I was dumbfounded. I couldn't believe they picked me. I could not believe they picked me to go on to the Q course, you know, disbelief. The sense of pride I got from earning the Beret was I went to the medic course, which is academically, in my opinion at least, the harder of the MOSs. It's a long course, lots of tests. They're rapid fire. The standards are, they never give up on the standards. They're always set at that must-pass level. I learned so much so fast. I had to learn how to study. I had to learn long division. I had terrible math scores going into the course, and I worked late hours with my buddies out in the barracks. Like, you got to teach me long division so I can do the anesthesia formulas. And I passed. You know, I went straight through the course, and I was lucky I didn't recycle. But I focused on everything I felt like I needed to focus on, and not just passing the test. And by the time this is pre-September 11th when I went to the course, and at the time the general consensus was you wanted to be SF because you wanted to be SF, and the motivating factors were a little bit different than maybe some of the younger generation. And man, when I got that Beret, I was like, this is a life-changing event. I mean, from then on out, I knew I was not destined for blue collar, you know, it's probably a bad way to describe it, but my family's very poor. At that moment I knew, hey, I may be the one who breaks the cycle. And if I want to, I can do anything.